Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another one of my FutureFight Vanguard series. 2 videos in one day. Must really be feeling the magic. 10 points for Gryffindor. But anyways, we're getting into our third deck, I believe, of G-BT11. Because I'm playing for, or I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm making up for lost time. Because I was busy with all the Atlanta stuff, so I didn't get to continue my FutureFight series and catch up like I wanted to. And I also had some real life stuff going on. But now that I have the time, I am pumping out more videos at the same time. So without further ado, this video is going to be about the Scharhrot Vampire Darkness deck coming out of G-BT11. So I know this is one of the more highly anticipated videos, so I'll get right into it. And we're gonna unflip our strides here, as per usual. And alright, let's get started. So we run 2 different grade 3s in this deck. Our 2 different grade 3s are Scharhrot grade 3s. We got a new Scharhrot in G-BT11. So it's actually very, very good on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle, so you can't really say that for a lot of the Striders. So it's most of the time like they're only good on Rearguard Circle or they're only good on Vanguard Circle, not both. But this card is very, very, very solid on both. So going over its abilities, it has 2 skills. The first skill is when your G unit strides, you can soul charge 2. If you do, and the number of cards with the darkness ability and your soul is 4 or more, then your opponent chooses one of their rear guards and retires it. So not a bad ability. You can like clear a little bit of your opponent's board. Unfortunately, if your opponent has a big board, like they can play like a useless unit essentially, and always avoid this part of the skill being harmful to them. But if your opponent doesn't have that great of a hand and they have to play like one of their good rear guards, then it can snipe it off by chance. Then its second ability is Generation Break 2 Darkness. Darkness is if you've soul charged that turn, so all the cards that say Darkness, that is one of Dark Irregular's keywords. So Generation Break 2, Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. When this unit attacks, if the number of cards in your soul is 10 or more, until the end of the battle, this unit gets plus 5,000 power, and your opponent cannot call grade 0 cards from their hand to the guard circle. Now that's very, very solid effect, just because guard restrict is always strong in this game, no matter what it's on. So the fact that it gains 5,000 and then they can't guard with zeros pretty much guarantees that they have to give you at least 2 cards, since they're going to be guarding with grade 1s or higher, unless their grade 1 or 2 has a special ability that adds guard to itself. But yeah, it's a very, very solid card. Then we run 3 of the old Scharhrot Vampire. So the old Scharhrot Vampire has a Generation Break 2 ability as well, but it's only on Vanguard Circle. It says during your turn, if the number of cards in your soul is 6 or more, this unit gets plus 10,000 power. Then if the cards in your number of cards in your soul is 10 or more, then this unit gets plus 1 critical. Then its stride skill is during your turn, when you stride, you can counterboss 1, soul charge 2, and choose one of your vanguards, and until the end of the turn, it gets an ability that says when this unit attacks a vanguard, if the number of cards in your soul is 6 or more, your opponent chooses one of their rear guards and retires it. Now, strangely enough, this like old Scharhrot is still very, very useful when you're going up against decks where you want to control their board a lot more, without going into the new Scharhrot stride. Because if you go into Bread-A-Mouth with this card, you can keep up the offensive pressure, and you can also use this stride skill twice, which a lot of people don't realize, because it just says when your unit attacks a Vanguard, if the number of cards in your soul is 6 or more. So when you attack twice with Bread-A-Mouth, you're able to make your opponent retire 2 rear guards on each attack. So it's very, very good. And by each attack, I mean they're retiring 1 each time you attack, not like 4 total, like 2 total. So very good stride skill. Also, if for whatever reason you don't have a lot of darkness cards in your soul, then you can just make them, you can just, this card becomes more useful than the older one. Also, you can focus on using the older one for a rear guard if you opt to ride this. Then we have 4 Brennan Vampire. So Brennan Vampire is one of our newer grade 2s from G-BT11. It is a darkness card, Generation Break 1. when this unit attacks a Vanguard, if you have a Vanguard with Scharhrot in its name, then you can counterblast 1, and this unit gets plus 1000 power for every card in your soul, and then it shoves itself into the soul, and you draw a card at the end of the battle. So it's very, very good. Like, you can keep up offensive pressure while keeping up your hand at the same time, also avoiding control. This card does a lot, actually. Like, it avoids control, keeps your hand up, attacks for really good numbers because you usually have really big soul. So yeah, it does a lot, and it's a very solid card. Then we have 4 Succubus of Attachment. This is another one of our Darkness cards, grade 2. It is basically a Darkness version of Flying Librarian, if you guys are familiar with that card. So Generation Break 1 Darkness. When this unit is placed on Rearguard Circle, you can counterblast 1. If you do, you get to Soul Charge 1. And then it gets additional effects depending on if your soul is 6 or more or 10 or more. If you have 6 or more cards in soul, then you get to countercharge 1. And then if you have 10 or more cards in your soul, then you get to draw 2 cards and discard 1 from your hand. So this helps you filter out your deck, filter out your hand, get better cards to your hand, countercharge, soul charge, does it all. Like, it just makes itself free. So it's a very, very good card as long as you have 10 cards in your soul. Or at least 9 cards in your soul, basically, because you're going to soul charge 1 off of the ability. Then we have 4 Demented Executioner. What Demented Executioner does is it has 2 abilities. So the first one's a Darkness ability that says counterblast 1 if the number of cards in your soul is 6 or more, then it gets 2000 power, and if the number of cards in your soul is 10 or more, then this unit gets plus 3000 power. In my opinion, it's not really, that skill particularly is not really that useful. But however, the second ability is what we run it for. The second ability says when it's placed on Rearguard, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, search for 1 card with Darkness and put it into your soul. So you want to go for Demented Executioner in the early turns and get a Were-Tiger Jaeger off of it, soul charge it, and then counterblast 1 with the Were-Tiger Jaeger skill and draw a card. So yeah, that's pretty much why we run this for the early game. Then we run 3 Pure Love Succubus. It's just our regular Scharhrot Stride Fighter. It can also search out Scharhrot if you play it to the field by revealing another grade 3, which is you would reveal 1 Scharhrot and get another one, and then you can discard any card. So pretty good card. Then we run 4 Were-Tiger Jaeger. This card is absolutely godlike. In Japan, they got this a lot like earlier than us, and they didn't get it in their set 11, but we got it in our set 11 because we didn't get it as the promo as it came out in Japan. So it has 3 abilities. The first ability is a Darkness skill that activates from the soul. So if this Were-Tiger Jaeger is in your soul, you can counterblast 1 and discard a card from your hand. If the number of cards in your soul is 6 or more, then you soul charge 1. And if the number of cards in your soul is 10 or more, then you can return this card to your hand. So basically you can ensure that you're going to stride every single turn by just grabbing one of these ahead of time. And so basically its second ability is from the hand, it is a Stride Fighter as long as you have 2 or more cards in your soul with the Darkness ability. So it's a pretty free cost. Like, you're going to have cards with Darkness in your soul, so it's going to be a free Stride Fighter, and it's going to be good. Then when this card is put into your soul, for the cost or effect of your card during your turn, you can counterblast 1 and draw a card. So this card nets you 1 every time you soul charge it, which can be pretty good. You also don't really have to worry about countercharge in this deck because there's a lot of ways to countercharge. Then we have 4 Closet Balloon. This is our new PG from G-BT11 that is also a Darkness card. Its abilities is the regular PG ability, Sentinel, and its additional ability with PGing is if you have a Closet Balloon in your soul and the number of cards in your soul is 10 or more, you can draw a card after PGing with it. So that's pretty good. It makes your PGing free basically if you have 1 in the soul and you have 10 or more cards in your soul. So then Generation Break 1 Darkness skill, if the number of cards in your soul is 6 or more, then this unit gets plus 2000 power on your Rearguard Circle. You don't really ever want to play to the Rearguard Circle, so I mean, I guess in the case that you do and you soul charged, it becomes an 8k, but I don't ever really want to play to the Rearguard Circle because there's not a way to bounce cards to hand. So then we have 3 Listic Vampire. So what Listic Vampire does is it has a Generation Break 1 ability that says when this card's placed on the Guardian Circle, if we have a card with the Darkness ability, we can put a card from our hand into our soul, and then we can choose a normal unit from our soul and put it into our hand. This unit really helps with guarding and getting out key cards that we need. Like let's say that we've soul charged a new Scharhrot and we want it for next turn to hit our opponent with Guard Restrict, or we need a Stride Fodder, we need a Jaeger, etc. We need Brennan Vampire back in our hand. Like, you can just get anything you want, and it makes it a great toolbox option. Then for our starter, we run 1 Deranged Singular. So what Deranged Singular does is it has a Forerunner skill, moves back out of the soul when ridden upon, like most starters. It has a second ability that's Darkness on the rear guard. When this unit boosts, it gets 2,000 power until the end of the battle. So basically in the early turns before you stride, anytime that you soul charge, it gets plus 2,000 power. So then it has a rear guard ability that says when your G unit strides, put this unit in all of your grade 1 or greater rear guards into your soul and draw 2 cards. So this card becomes like just really good, because anytime you stride, even Sabriz, you can just use it on your opponent, shove it into the soul, and draw 2 cards. So it's such a plus, and it also fills your soul very nicely. Then we have 8 criticals. We have 4 One-Eyed Succubus and 4 Dark Knight of Nightmareland. One-Eyed Succubus is our crit trigger that shoves itself into the soul when our Vanguard attacks if our Vanguard has Scharhrot in the name, and we draw a card and our Vanguard gets plus 5,000. And then Dark Knight of Nightmareland is our crit trigger that goes into the soul, and we can choose up to one of our Dark Irregular cards, and that unit gets plus 3,000 power. So we're really just shoving a bunch of triggers into our soul for our new card Bread of Mouth, but we'll talk about that in a little bit when I get to that. And then we run 4 stand triggers. The new stand trigger from G-BT11 called Werkatse Recruit. We run 4 of these because it increases our guard potential exponentially. It has 2 abilities. The first one is a Darkness ability that says if the number of cards in your soul is 10 or more, this unit gets plus 5,000 power and plus 5,000 shield. So I really only use it for shielding, but I've seen some people use it for like a 10k booster if they want to play it to their rear guard and etc. It makes your hand not so weak as far as guarding. Also, when an attack did not hit, you can put that card into your soul at the end of the guard step, which means that if you have multiples of these in your hand, you can actually trigger the Darkness during your opponent's turn just by guarding with 1, and then the next one that you guard with will be 15k shield instead of 10k. So something to keep in mind. Then we run 4 Specialist Vincent. This is our heal trigger from the Fighters Collection. Basically, when it's discarded as a cost to G-Guard with Medicine of Discontinuation Vincent, which is our new Stride Fodder from the Fighters Collection. Whenever you discard it for the G-Guard version of Vincent, you can put this card into your soul. So it's a pretty good card for building soul, and also it works like really well with the Vincent ability of your G-Guard as well, to make sure that you have enough cards in your soul to be going off. Moving on into the G-Zone, we have 4 of the man, the myth, the legend himself, Bread of Mouth. This card just made Dark Irregulars like exponentially better, along with Were-Tiger Jaeger. I would say it's Were-Tiger Jaeger in this card that pretty much brought this card back, or brought this deck back from the grave, and Dark Irregulars in general. So what this card does is it has a Generation Break 2 ability, Darkness, which means you have to soul charge at least once that turn, which is literally no problem for this deck. So you can counterblast 1 and choose a Bread of Mouth and flip it face up in your G-Zone, then put 2 cards from your hand into your soul. And when this unit attacks and it has 10 or more cards in your soul, you can pay the cost, what I just discussed. Then if you do, you would get to return all grade 0 cards from your soul and rear guard to the deck, and then shuffle your deck, choose 2 of your units, they get plus 5,000 power, and then at the end of the battle, you restand this unit and it gets drive -2. So basically this is they gave like Dark Irregular restander, which I never in a million years guessed that they would give it to them in a stride form like this. It is very good. Also, it just sends all the grade 0s from your soul and rear guard back to the deck, which works perfectly with this deck because all of your triggers literally go to your soul when you use their abilities. So you just try to stack up as much triggers as you can into your soul, and then they all go back to the deck, and you get to have more chances of checking triggers, also restanding. So Very, very good card. Probably the most solid card that carries the deck, carries the Stride Zone through in this deck. Then we run one Coffin of Absolute Zero Rootland V-Tray. This is our Generation Break 8 in the Dark Regular deck. It has a very simplistic skill, but also very good at the same time. Its Generation Break 8 is all units in your front row get plus 13,000 and 1 critical for every 13 cards in your soul. So if you make it to Generation Break 8, you're going to have 13 cards in your soul probably, and then your rear guards will just gain 13k in a critical. So your new Scharhrots, like let's say you have 2 new Scharhrots on the field, your Scharhrots by themselves will be swinging for 29 with an extra critical and guard restrict, so your opponent should be pretty scared of that, and the GB8 is pretty solid. Then we have one Steeped in Sin Scharhrot. This is our Scharhrot Stride from G-BT11, I believe. It's still a very good card in this deck. I only run it at a 1-of though. One of the reasons is because it doesn't have to flip anything, but another reason is that you just don't use it that often unless you're trying to wipe your opponent's board, and that's why we still run it as a 1-of. So when this unit attacks, if you're Generation Break 2 and if you're also meet Darkness condition, you can counterboss 1. If you do, you put all of your rear guards into your soul. This unit gets plus 10,000 power. And then if the number of cards in your soul is 10 or more, then you retire all your opponent's rear guards. And if the number of cards in your soul is 15 or more, then your opponent can't guard with Sentinels. So they can't PG, they can't Quintet Wall, they can't guard with their really good sources of guard. So it becomes an attack that they actually have to be scared of. Moving on, we have 4 Guild Arise. So what Guild Arise does is it has an ability that says flip a Guild Arise from your G-Zone face up. If the number of cards in your soul is 10 or more, it gets plus 10,000 power. And then if the number of cards is 15 or more, then this unit gets an ability that says when it attacks a Vanguard, your opponent can't guard with grade 1s or higher. And if the number of cards in your G-Zone is 2 or more, so basically if you're using it while you're Generation Break 2, this unit gets plus 1 critical until the end of the turn. So this card is kind of very similar to Scharhrot, except Scharhrot retires all your opponent's rear guards, Guild Arise gains a crit, and like they have to be extra scared of this card because it gets really big as well. So you basically just use it on your opponent when you see them check a lot of PGs. You're just trying to finish them. A lot of times if your opponent just checks 1 PG, it's still solid to go into Bread of Mouth. But if they check like 2 to 3 PGs and you know they have 2 to 3 PGs in their hand, you can just Guild Arise them and they'll probably die, to be honest. Then we have one Mask of Demonic Insanity, Ilkraze. Ilkraze is a pretty good card. It is one of our Darkness Strides, like one of our choices for first stride. So you can use the ability when it attacks. So when this unit attacks a Vanguard, you can Soul Charge 2. And then if the number of cards in your soul is 6 or more, this unit gets a skill that says when the attack hits, your opponent chooses one of their rear guards and retires it. Then if the number of cards in your soul is 15 or more, this unit gets plus 1,000 power for every card in your soul. So it can either become a really big beater if you have 15 or more cards in your soul, but most of the time you're going to be using it as your first stride if you don't have a grade 3 in your soul to get off of Rugarius. So you're mostly just going to be using it for the on-hit retire skill, which I believe is a lot more useful than Rugarius on first stride, just because Rugarius like only gets over this in my opinion if they have if we have a grade 3 in our soul that we can pull out from it. But speaking of Rugarius, what Rugarius does is you counterboss 1, you choose a face down card from your G-Zone, turn it face up, you Soul Charge 3, and then you choose one of your rear guards for every card Soul Charge with different grades, and they get plus 5,000 power. And then if you Soul Charge the card with the Darkness ability, then you get to choose a grade 3 from your soul and move it to your hand. So pretty good for first stride if you happen to Soul Charge a grade 3 and you can just get that grade 3 out. Otherwise, I would just go into Ilkraze. Then for our G-Guardians, we run 4 of the different Dark Regular G-Guardians. We run 1 Sabnak. Sabnak is our new G-Guardian from G-BT11 that's really, really good. When this unit is placed on the guard circle during the battle that your opponent's Vanguard attacked you, then if the number of cards in your soul is 10 or more, you can counterboss 1. This unit gets shield plus 5,000, and then you can choose one of your Vanguards and it gets plus 5,000 until the end of the turn. Now this is a very, very, very good G-Guardian because it allows you to fight decks like Blasters and stuff like that like very efficiently. because it gets 5,000 to the Vanguard for the rest of the turn. So without checking a damage trigger, you're able to give power to your Vanguard for the rest of the turn, which is always good in any deck defensively. So very good card. Then we have one Vincent. This is our Fighters Collection G-Guard, like I stated before. Its skill is flip a G-Guardian face up in your G-Zone, and then when this card is placed on the guard circle, you can soul charge one, and this unit gets plus 5,000 shield for every 5 cards in your soul to the end of the battle. So if you have 15 cards in your soul, this card will be guarding for 30 or 41, which is very, very solid card. Then you have one False Dark Rings Agrat Bat Malot. So what this does is when it's placed on the guard circle, soul charge 2, and if the number of cards in your soul is 6 or more, then this unit gets plus 5,000 shield. Pretty much our generic 31k G-Guardian for Dark Irregulars. Then we have one Nighttime Gentleman Saint Germain. So Saint Germain is so good in so many different scenarios. One of those scenarios being that when it's placed, or first I'll discuss its skill. So its skill is that when it's placed on the guard circle, if the number of cards in your soul is 10 or more, then this unit gets plus 10,000 power. And if the number of cards in your soul is 15 or more, which it should be, then you choose any number of your units and they get resist on the Vanguard circle, the rear guard circle, and the guard circle. So first let's talk about the Vanguard circle and why it's relevant to give your Vanguard resist. So your Vanguard won't be able to be targeted by abilities like VMAX that will deal you a damage. Any ability that says deal your opponent a damage, like, it won't work if you use Saint Germain in that turn, because your Vanguard will have resist and can't be targeted by effects. So if they go into VMAX, if you're playing against Narukami, like, this deck has a great matchup against that purely because of this card. When they try to finish you off of VMAX, you just go Saint Germain and tell them no. Then you also have like the rear guards. Giving your rear guards resist is always good against control. And then, but most of the time control will blow your rear guards before you even get to the battle phase, so that's kind of irrelevant. But as far as the guard circle giving resist is, you can guard with multiple cards, and then you can give your units resist so that they can't be blown off the guard circle by like Dimension Police or something like that. So this deck also has a good matchup against D-Robos, in my opinion. So then moving on to the games here. We are going to have Alright, so moving on to the games, we are going to start with Scharhrot 1. And then our first opponent is playing Night Rose, it seems. They're running Guile Shade as their starter, which is actually pretty interesting because there's not a lot of times where you will see someone run Guile Shade in a Night Rose deck. So we ride and we attack him, we get a stand trigger. He gets a Siege Strolling Banshee, and this is actually like a very interesting, weird build that I've never seen before. Because there's a lot of cards that I'm seeing him play that I don't really see often. But we used Demented Executioner, and we're able to get a Were-Tiger, kind of also want to draw a card, and we drew into the new Scharhrot, as you guys can see. So we use another Demented, and the card that we put in soul from that one was a new Scharhrot. So we're setting up for our first stride turn. So we attack for 9, attack for 9, and then attack for 14. He guards only one of our attacks. He takes a damage, and 2 of them are Night Roses, so I was hoping that he didn't have the regular Night Rose in his hand, but he still did. So he attacks our Vanguard, he doesn't get any triggers, and there's his 4th Night Rose. So all his Night Rose were near the top of his deck. Then we stride into Rugarius. We use the range skill to shove all our cards into the soul, and then we draw 2, and then we use our stride skill to soul charge 2. He chooses a card and retires it, because we have a lot of darkness cards in our soul, specifically 4 or more. And then right here, I play attachment, I soul charge, and then I unflip, and I draw 2 cards since we have 10 or more in the soul, and I discard 1, being the new grade 3 Scharhrot. And then I call Demented Executioner, and I put 1 into the soul. The card that I put into the soul was Succubus of Attachment. And actually thinking back on it, I could have just I could have just played the Scharhrot grade 3 to the rearguard circle and probably forced more pressure out of him. But then I used Rudarius and got a Scharhrot out of the soul anyways, so it wasn't really a big deal. So then I attack my Vanguard, I get a critical, and then I also get another critical, putting it all to my rearguard, and I attack him for a 24, which he's able to guard with 1 card. He goes into Negro Songer and uses the skill of Night Rose to mill some cards, which is kind of weird because he rewrote into Vampire Princess of Starlight Night Rose, when I believe that this Night Rose is just way better to be on as your Vanguard. So I guess he wanted to mill, so he milled and then he called a board, but it does leave him with no cards in his hand, so that kind of leaves me in a position to utterly destroy him the following turn. He attacks with his Shade card, and I asked him is Maltreat hollowed, because he hasn't been really calling the hollow abilities, so I guess it wasn't hollowed, so it doesn't get power. Then I no-guard his Vanguard, he checks a Starlight, a Stand Trigger, and a grade 1. So I knew that since he checked a Stand Trigger, like if he used Negro Songer skill, he would either call a card to the back row. Like there basically wouldn't be any extra attacks. Like I think he should have just attacked with both, and then both rearguard columns and then Vanguard. But he attacks for 20. I guard with Listig, Vampire, using this skill to shove a card to the soul, get a PG out. And then he attacks my rearguard for 12, I let it go. Then I draw a card, I stride into Breadamouth. And then I use Scharhrot's skill to soul charge 2. I make him retire 1 of his choice, so he retires King Serpent. And then I play new Scharhrot to the board and Brennan Vampire. I call 2 grade 0s. I use 1 to shove into the soul, give Brennan 3k. Since I won't be able to use its ability, give it power this turn. So I attack with my Scharhrot, and then with the no guarding with grade 0 skill, he's forced to take it because he cannot guard. Or he could, but he would have to guard with that grade 1 and intercept, but I don't think he was thinking about that. So we attack with our Vanguard, which is Breadamouth, and then Breadamouth returns all of our 0s to the deck. And we shuffle, and he no guards, so I check the Stand Trigger, Stand Scharhrot, check another Stand Trigger, power to Brennan, and then crit trigger, power to Brennan as well, and crit to Vanguard, and then he 6 damage heals, but he doesn't get the second 6 damage heal, which he would have needed to survive, so we were able to clutch the first game against a Night Rose player. And then we're going into Scharhrot game 2. Looks like we're playing against OTT. So our opponent rides grade 2, then attacks us, uses Lozenge Magus skill, which is interesting that they're using Lozenge as their starter, but using Lozenge as their starter also allows them more space in their grade 2 lineup or their grade 1 lineup, or even their grade 3s if they want to run like 9 grade 3s, even though that would be really weird. But we attack him, he gets a draw trigger, and then we attack him again, we check no trigger, and he gets a crit, which I was actually really sincerely glad about, because whenever they check crits, like, I just get really glad about it in the damage zone, because that's one less crit that I have to worry about. However, he does reride to grade 2 so that we can't Sabreeze him, but we don't even run Sabreeze in this deck, so joke's on him. We no guard the Vanguard, and we get a Stand Trigger, put it power to Vanguard, and then we take his rear guard. He uses the skill to counter boss 1, soul boss 1, look at the top 2, add 1 to hand, add 1 to bottom. Then we ride the new Scharhrot, and then I just choose to attack 9 of his Vanguard, and then we attack for 16 to his Vanguard. He PGs, which we got a good PG out of him because we didn't waste a crit in that attack, so it was a good PG for us to get out of him. So then he rides and strides into Kamo Susanoo, He uses Susanoo's skill, I believe, to Soul Blast 2 and draw. Actually, he doesn't use it. So he's just calling Weather Girl Lassie and Weather Girl Shake to the board. And then he attacks my Vanguard. I no guard, hoping that he doesn't double crit me. He checks 1 crit, and then he checks a heal trigger. So I'm like, ooh, at least he didn't double crit me. It could have been a lot worse. But apparently, like, something that people on area don't know is that they have to apply triggers as they come up. So he never said anything about the crit, so he just placed it on his rear guard. But yeah, so he placed the crit on his rear guard, and now Nanase has the crit. So he attacks with Shake and Lassie. So he uses the effect to look at the top, put it on the bottom, and gets power. And now using Shake to look at the top, put it on the bottom, gets 2000 power. So he's attacking us for 25. We take the 25, I believe. Yeah, he was like confusing me by what he was doing, so I was asking him a bunch of questions. But I do get a sand trigger, put the power on my Vanguard, and then he gets 6k to Nanase, so Nanase attacks me for 26, which is the exact number needed for me to guard with more cards from my hand. So I actually used the skill to get one of my cards. Then I shoved a Were-Tiger into the soul with this to get more cards out and draw more cards. So it's actually very useful in that way too. You can guard with it, put a Were-Tiger into the soul, and then use the skill like that. So right here, I stride into Elcrease. I move a card to the soul, or I move my starter to the soul to draw 2, and then I soul charge 2. I make him retire 1. He chooses to retire Lassie. And then I play down 2 Brennan Vampires, because I plan to get some serious advantage in this turn. So I attack him, and then I increase my power by 6, because there's 6 cards in soul, so 19. He takes it, gets a heal trigger, but the heal trigger does not go off. Card goes to my soul, I draw, I soul charge 2, it gets an on-hit skill. So he uses his G-Guardian skill, Amaterasu, to make it a 2 to pass, because I forgot to put the 5000 here. Yeah, so 2 to pass, and he goes for the 2 to pass. I check my triggers, or in this case, I check my trigger, singular. I put all power to Brennan Vampire. I use Brennan Vampire's soul skill to kind of boss 1 and put into the soul and draw a card. Then he draws, and he uses the skill of his Precious Ophidian to make his stride skill free. And then he goes into Ichikishima. So in this scenario, it's like looking really bad for me right now, because I have some grade 0s in my hand, but most of the cards in my hand are 3s. So it pretty much comes down to him not getting a crit, which I don't trust in OTT pretty much. So he uses the skill to soul boss 1 draw a card, and then he calls another Precious Ophidian, drawing the crit out. So he attacks me for 30. I no guard it, I think, yeah. So I no guarded here because I don't think I can guard it. He checks a PG, a draw trigger, and a heal trigger. So that's definitely why you run crits in that deck, because there'll be situations like that where your opponent will be forced not to guard. So he attacks with 34 from Nanase, and I use 4 cards to guard it. And then he attacks with Shake using the skill. Check the top, put on the bottom. Gains 2k. And so then I give him 2 cards. Then I draw, I stride into Bread of Mouth. I use Scharhrot's skill to Soul Charge 2, make him retire 1. He retires one of his precious Ophidians. Then I light up the board with a double Scharhrot play, pretty much the strongest play I can make at this current moment. I use 2 crit trigger skill to give power to my Scharhrot, so I do plus 5,000 and he can't guard with zeros, so he PGs. And then I use the Vanguard skill of Bread of Mouth to counterboss 1 flip of Bread of Mouth, put 2 cards into the soul. And then I return all my grade zeros to my deck. And I shuffle, give plus 5,000 to both my rear guards. He guards for a 2 to pass. And he decides that he's gonna no pass it, so I check 3 cards. And believe it or not, I do not check like multiple triggers. So I attack him, I get a crit. Then I attack him with 26, just regular, with 2 crit. And then he chooses to PG my last attack. So he had like 4 PGs in his hand or something like that, so respect to him. There's not many ways that you can really survive that turn unless you get it like that. So he's able to stride into Ichikishima again. Use this skill to Soul Blast 2, draw 1. And then he uses Vanguard's effect to counterboss 1, Soul Blast 1, and draw 2. And then he uses Vanguard's effect, Oracle, to make me unable to guard with the zeros, and G-Guardians. He replaces his Shake with a Nanase and calls a Lassie as well. I no guard the Vanguard. This time he does get the critical. And then I check my 2 damage. My first one is a heal, so I heal and get power to my Vanguard. Second one is a crit, so I get power to my Vanguard. Because he's an Oracle, he gives 7k to his rear guards. And then because his drive check revealed a grade 3, Lassie allows him to countercharge. Then he uses Weather Girl's effect, puts it on the bottom, and then he attacks me for 25, which I'm able to just guard with a regular 5, put a card in the soul, and get 1 out, so I got a PG out. Then he attacks for 22, so I just choose to PG it. Then I stride into Bread of Mouth again. So I was trying to tell him that he doesn't choose the skill of his PG because it's random. So a lot of people don't understand that the PG goes to hand and then it random binds so that they have a chance of sniping the PG that they just got. So he said 1 through 8, I said 3, he got rid of one of his cards. So then I Soul Charge 2, I make him retire 1. And then I attack him for 16, no grade 1s or higher. Then I attack him for 16, no grade 1s or higher. and he chooses to intercept with one Nanase and another grade 2. Then I do bread and mouth skill, shoving both cards into the soul, flipping a bread mouth, and putting my zeros back to the deck. He PGs, so I check 1, check 2, critical trigger, and check 3, heal trigger. I put all the power in my Vanguard, and then I swing at him for 41 with a crit. And he does not guard. I get a stand trigger, and I stand my rear guard at the last minute, and he has to take 2 damage, and he loses. So I guess you could say we got pretty lucky there, but honestly, like, if he would have just finished me before I bred him out the first time, he would have just won the game completely. So it would have been a game going completely to him. So then we have Scharhrot in game 3 at last, and we're playing against Nova Grappler. So he takes the first turn, I attack, I check new Scharhrot, and he attacks for 14, checks the heal trigger. Then I attack for 14, get a new Scharhrot again. He gets a draw trigger, so I'm like, man, this guy's so lucky. Then he attacks me and gets a crit. I'm like, oh man, I'm getting nailed over here. So then I stride, I shove my starter into soul, and I counterblast, or I soul charge 2, then I make him retire his starter, since he left it as the only rear guard on the board. And he only counted 3 darkness cards in my soul, but Were Tiger, Demented, my starter, and the PG all have darkness, so I guess he missed that. So yeah, so we do have a grade 3 in our soul, so we're able to just play double Scharhrot, like, right off the bat, even though we don't have 10 cards in our soul. I just think it's funny. So we're able to soul charge 3. They are 3 different cards, so we get power, and then move the new Scharhrot to our hand, and then we play double crit trigger. We attack him for 20. He guards with a 0. Then we attack and shove 2 cards in a soul. He no guards. We check a critical trigger, a stand trigger, and another critical trigger. So now we're the lucky ones. I was like, oh man, thank goodness we deserve this. So then he gets a draw trigger, unfortunately. He takes 1 attack, gets a heal trigger, and heals. So then he starts his turn, and he chooses to stride into Buster, or Busted, as I like to call it. So you kind of bust 1, soul boss 1 for Arboreal. And then he calls Sazanza and Malyaki, and a Claydol mechanic to unflip 1. And then he attacks my rear guard for 16. I guard it with a 0. And then he attacks my Vanguard for 11, using the skill to restand Malyaki, or restand Sazanza. So then he attacks 23. And he was trying to attack my rear guard, but I took a damage because I knew that he was attacking Vanguard, because he can only get the power to his rear guard if he attacks Vanguard. So I basically told him that he used Malyaki's skill by giving 4k, 4k. And then when I told him that, I think he quit the game, if I remember right. We'll wait like a few more seconds just to see, but I'm pretty sure I remember him quitting the game at this point, which is unfortunate, but like, we don't know the cards that he would have checked. So I guess best case scenario, if he would have healed down, he would have survived, but I don't think that he would have survived a double assault from 2 Scharhrot's rear guards, because he would have had to have, like, you know, 4 PGs like the previous guy. So yeah, our opponent definitely quit the game, and that is unfortunate that our opponent cannot read their own cards, and therefore they get mad at us and quit the game. But with that being said, that has been the Scharhrot Vampire Darkness deck from G-BT11. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Sorry that it ended on a sour note. I'll try to get some better games next time where people aren't quitting. But yeah, leave me a like and a comment down below letting me know what you thought of the video. Don't forget to subscribe. Definitely subscribe. And check out all of our social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon. Thank you to my Patreons for supporting the channel. Your support means the greatest, most awesome support in the world. And I appreciate you guys so dearly. But with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video.